Hey friends. All right, so today I want to talk to you guys about rewiring your nervous system for radical receiving in your business. And this could be used for your business and your life. And I'm going to kind of go over some of the core wounds, the core receiving wounds that keep us and block us from being able to really claim and have and hold what we want. For many of us, when we're not getting the results we want in our business, our automatic reaction is to start to focus on strategy. We look at our message, our marketing, our content. We get busy doing more, pivoting, trying different types of strategy. And sometimes that works, but most of the time it actually doesn't work. It actually reinforces the sense that things are hard, that things are blocked, that results are not happening. And the reason that is because when results are slow to come, when they're hard to get, or they're not big enough, like you're working this much and your results are this much, oftentimes it's rarely a doing problem, a strategy issue. It's actually a receiving problem. It's something in us that doesn't feel safe or worthy of receiving. And so it becomes a vicious cycle because the more you do, the more you're reinforcing that things are not working, that things are hard, the more your nervous system starts to contract and block receiving even more. And so what we want to do then is we want to start shifting and noticing and having some kind of awareness of which block is showing up. What is it here that is actually sabotaging my results? What's going on in here so that I can get unstuck out there? One of the things we have to understand is that when things feel hard and they're not really working and we're doing more, that action comes like the motivation behind that action is literally a sense of confusion, a sense of frustration, a sense of lack and scarcity, which leads usually, because the motivator, the seed, leads to the fruit. And so that leads to actually more contraction, more lack, more frustration. And it becomes that ongoing vicious cycle. So it's really important when things are not working to actually pause, to stop, to come back to ourselves, to figure out what's happening inside us that makes success feel scary to something in us, and start to work through that and come back into a place of receivership so that we can start doing, not from a place of scarcity, not from a place of feeling lost or confused, but from a place of clarity, from a place of feeling deeply grounded and anchored in our own being, in our own sense of safety and enoughness and worthiness. Because that's the kind of seed, motivation, fuel we want behind every action so that it bears the right kind of fruits. Lots of clients come to see me because they're stuck in that pattern of doing too much and working too hard for too little results. And they're starting to get burned out. They're starting to resent their business. They're feeling uninspired to share because they feel stuck. When I worked as a licensed therapist in private practice for over 15 years, I found that underneath the patterns of feeling stuck, feeling overwhelmed, feeling anxious, and even burned out, there was usually some kind of chronic inability to receive, especially an inability to receive at the level, at the depth needed to sustain growth and success. And I discovered that there were 4 main wounds that were at the core of that inability to receive. So that's what we're going to go over today. I'm going to share with you what those core wounds are. I'm going to share with you why they arise in our nervous system. And then I'm going to give you a couple different practices that you can start using now to start to recalibrate and rewire yourself for receivership. So to succeed at higher and higher levels, essentially we must all recode our nervous system, recode our identity to be able to receive at higher and higher levels without shame, without guilt, without fear of it coming at a high cost or sacrifice. So that's the topic today. Before I go into the depth of it, let me introduce myself in case you don't know me. Hi, I'm Ilsa. I'm a total spiritual nerd. For the last 18 years, I've been a psychotherapist, an expansion expert, and a strategist for entrepreneurs and leaders mainly. But I've worked with people from all walks of life. And I essentially teach my clients how to rewire their nervous system, their lives, their relationships, their bodies, and their business for more. At the end of this training, I'm going to go into a little more detail on my Wired for Wealth intensive that I offer for 55% off. But just in case you don't make it all the way to the end, I have one of those left for 2023 for this year. So if you are interested in learning how to rewire your nervous system out of contraction into expansion, into a much more easeful receivership, consistent, expansive growth, joyful wealth, then I would love to invite you to book that one last session. Just click the link in the description of this video. Okay, so let's start exploring the four most common receiving blocks, receiving wounds that essentially get in the way of our ability and our capacity to allow in the results that we desire in our life, in our business, to essentially be able to bring in and hold more good, more wealth, more clients, whatever is essentially receiving is not just about money. It's about support. It's about joy. It's about ease. It's about everything you actually want. The thing we want to understand with receiving is that receiving and giving are two sides of the same coin. If you do too much without receiving in some level of equal measure, then you automatically start to burn out. You essentially start to move yourself towards exhaustion, resentment. And because of that, your nervous system starts to contract right away. And this is why it's so important to start shifting that pattern that so many of us have, that if it's not working, we do more. Because the more you do without results, the faster you actually propel yourself towards this sense of exhaustion, this sense of draining, this sense of resentment that will lead to literally shutting down and closing down any ability that you have to receive. A block in our receivership can take a number of different shapes. And for some of us, it literally means like we're not able to see any results. But another way that it can show up is in overgiving, or not being able to ask for support, being like giving a shit ton of value and not being able to ask for the sale, or not being able to raise our prices or set some clearer boundaries in terms of our time and energy. I, by the way, have experienced all of these. When I talk about like struggle with receivership and these receiving wounds, I talk from personal experience. I am the kind of practitioner who literally spends 15 years essentially working my ass off for very little money. and wondering why everybody else who wasn't even doing as good work as I was, giving as much as I was making so much more than I was. It was only when I started to really look at what's going on in here that things started to shift. I stopped being invisible. I started bringing in client consistently. I started being able to raise my rates without people balking at paying me a little more. And I started being able to create a business that really lit me up and was in total alignment with who I want to be, what I want to do, the kind of money I want to make. So I'm coming to you sharing this not from an academic perspective, but from very much a lived experience of how this shows up in our lives and how insidious it can be. I call myself a lot of the time that I'm in recovery. I'm a recovering people pleaser and overgiver. It's still something I work on all the time because my natural tendency is to ask for very little and to give a whole lot. And in the past, it served me very poorly. So when we're stuck in a pattern where we're doing a lot and we're working hard, but we're not seeing the results that we want, there could be something tangible going on. All right. I'm not saying that your messaging might not be off, that maybe your offer and your marketing isn't clear, that you're not in love with what you're offering. So you're kind of blocking it. Like there could be something tangible happening that you want to look at. But more than likely, if you're working really hard and you're not seeing the results you want, it's because something in you doesn't feel safe or worthy of receiving. Essentially, something in us is creating an imbalance or an inequality between our giving and receiving. It's like we're always breathing out without ever taking a full breath in. At some point, you just can't do it anymore. At some point, you end up asphyxiating. You end up burnt out, drained, dejected. What happens too when you're seeing that you're having to give a lot to receive, what you end up doing is you end up sabotaging your own growth because growing becomes unsustainable for your nervous system. Because everything feels hard, because everything feels like it comes at a high cost, at a sacrifice in terms of your time, your energy, something in you actually doesn't want to grow. Something in you doesn't want to succeed because it just feels like it's a zero-sum game. It feels like it's a lose-lose for you because to get this much, you're going to have to give this much. And that imbalance literally contracts the nervous system and like blocks the flow. It creates resistance. I like to say that resistance is the antithesis to receiving. It's literally the fundamental blockage of receiving. So if there's anything in the way you're in the patterns that you're have in place in terms of receiving, giving, your business model that actually creates that rut, creates resistance, you will block it. You will block the growth, you will block the joyful flow, you will block the abundance. For many of us, we live in a society where we were programmed to be aware of those around us. We were programmed to be aware of their needs, their wants, how we can support them, what we can do for them. Now, if you if you happen to, on top of that, be a spiritual, sensitive, kind of transformational leader, then you have that extra because you got all the spiritual aspect, but we're supposed to really lead and help others and not ask much in return. And so for a lot of us, we were either raised to be natural caretakers or we are natural caretakers. It's just how we're built. Or we were literally raised and programmed to be natural caretakers. And that's something we have to shift because We were raised to give. We were raised and wired to output, to breathe out, and not to breathe in. And some of us were actually, and this is where the 4 wounds will come up, some of us were actually raised to feel like taking, receiving, breathing in is dangerous, it's selfish, it means we're taking from someone else, it means we're going to become a target, we're going to get too big for our own britches. And so there is all of this friction that is built into us around receiving. For most of us, we were not taught how to feel safe asking for what we want. We were not taught how to value ourselves and put ourselves first and boldly put ourselves out there. No, we were taught to put others first, to take a step back, to let others shine. We were not taught that our desires are good, that we deserve the world. We were taught to be humble, to not ask for too much. We were not taught that life is infinitely abundant and wants to give to us and that there's more than enough. No, we were taught that money doesn't grow on trees. We were not taught that receiving what we want does not equal to somebody else going without. We were not taught that receiving is as valuable, as needed, as sacred, and as holy as giving, that they're literally 2 sides of the same coin, and that being able to receive powerfully makes you able to give powerfully. Essentially, we were not taught that receiving is good and how to be wired, how to be programmed, how to be open to the flow of receiving. So if things are hard or they're not as easy as you would want them to be, it's not your fault. It's kind of the way this world is set up, especially for you if you are a relatively sensitive, open-hearted person. So now let me dive into these 4 main wounds, because many of us were taught the flip side of that. We were taught that wanting, that asking for what we want was not safe, that receiving came at a cost or led to disappointment and shaming or guilt trips. And so we have these innate wounds and blocks inside us. And so here's what I want you to do. As I'm going through these 4 main blocks, main wounds, I want you to pay attention to which one you think you have. And you might have all of them. I have, because you always have them. You just keep working with the parts of you that are wounded. You might have all of them. But usually we have 1 or 2 that are just stronger than the others. And what I want you to pay attention to is any memories as I'm reading them, as I'm describing these wounds, any memories that come up that kind of go with that wound, so that you can start having a map for all the places where you're essentially blocking your receivership. So the first wound or the first block is the wanting block. And this is where we were taught that it's unsafe to want. And by extension, it's unsafe to ask. Because, and usually this wound comes from a couple different places. Either we've been shamed, rejected, or denied when we wanted something, when we asked for something, or we might even have been punished when we dared to want and ask for something that we couldn't have or that our family couldn't provide for us. And so wanting and asking almost starts to become dangerous, like a weapon that's used against us that leads to us feeling disappointed or feeling shame. And so we start to block the flow of desire. Like almost like desire is bad, and we start to actually have an inability to really know what we want. And this is something I work a lot when I start to work with people in the nervous system, because you can't receive if you don't feel safe and clear as to what it is you really want. And the not knowing what we want for many entrepreneurs leads us to creating business models or to selling things that is actually not what we truly want. And we don't even realize that it's not what we want. And so then we don't create a result because we don't actually want to sell what we're selling. We're not in love with what we're providing. We're following somebody else's model, somebody else's guidelines, um, because like our ability to really like be in the flow of desire, to really have access to our own wants is blocked. And so, I'm going to give you an example of my own life with this one that I will often share with clients. When I was little, I don't know, maybe 9, 8, I wanted these really high up sneakers that were in fashion, and I wanted Nike. And my school was a Catholic, wealthy Catholic school. And so I told my mom that for Christmas, I wanted these high up Nike sneakers. And she got me essentially the Walmart brand at wherever we were. And then, of course, I had to wear them and I got made fun of by all my classmates. And so I got this thing inside me that felt like I don't get to have what I want. And so that's a wanting block. And it's better to not actually want anything because even if I dare to ask, I get the wrong thing and I get punished for it. So you want to look at your life. Is there any place where you felt shame for wanting, or you felt you were in trouble for asking for what you wanted, or you actually got something, but it wasn't what you asked for? Like you didn't deserve to get what you wanted. That would be the wanting block. So that's the first main wound in our nervous system that keeps us from really having access to our deepest desires and to being able to ask for them, which blocks the flow of receiving. The second wound is the receiving block or the receiving wound. You know that you have this if you find that you have an inability to truly receive and feel comfortable with receiving. What does that look like? It looks like when you do receive, saying thank you feels weird. Celebrating, taking in the good, feeling nourished by our wins feels hard. Taking time to really pause and stop and really like feel it doesn't happen. It almost feels like you're just checking and then moving on in your business. Essentially, something in us either doesn't feel worthy or doesn't feel safe to really receive. And there's a couple reasons why that can happen. One is something in us is afraid that we're going to have to pay for it in some way. That whatever we're given and whatever we really take in is either going to come at a high cost or at a high sacrifice because nothing's for free, essentially. The other way that this shows up, or the other reason why this is there can be a sense that almost like receiving is viewed as a safety hazard. Like if I take it in, if I celebrate it, I'm going to jinx it. Like good things happen, and then some things like waiting in the corner, waiting in the dark, to either take it from us or to, like punish us or for the other shoe to drop. In some way, it almost feels like when we receive good thing, it's jinxing us and preparing us for something bad. And you can see that show up with like people who will have like bring in some money and then something will happen where like the car breaks down or they get a bill they weren't expecting. And so it feels like when we celebrate what we receive, when we really take it in some ways, we're like daring the universe to take it from us. This can also show up, the receiving wound, when maybe you feel bad about receiving something that other kids don't have. Or maybe when you got something, you were expected to behave or to do something back in exchange. So, like, you got the ugly, itchy sweater grandma got you, and you had to wear it. Kind of like with me when I got the shoes. Technically, I got the shoes I didn't ask for, but from my mother's perspective, I got the shoes I wanted, and now I have to wear them, and now I'm being punished. Or maybe when you received someone in your family, a sibling, was jealous. So there's something in you that starts to notice that receiving always comes at a cost. And so receiving is bad. Or whenever something good happens, something bad also happens. And so good things happening is bad. And so something starts to feel unsafe about letting the good in. So that's the receiving block where we literally can't celebrate, we can't take in, we can't feel satisfied with the good. And we're almost looking over our shoulder for the other shoe to drop. The third wound I call the to have or to hold block. And this is when we struggle with holding on and keeping what we receive. And so this is like almost the flip side or the other side of a receiving wound. This is very common with money patterns of feast and famine, where you'll have a really big month and then nothing, or you'll break through some ceiling that you had in place, and then it'll come back and be the desert. I see that too with clients who will say to me, I'm making more money than I ever made, but there's still nothing left. Like, it feels like whatever money I make, there's always a reason for it to go. I can't hold on to it. I can't actually have it. So you can receive it, but you can't have it. There's something in you that feels like it's not okay to have more. It's not okay to hold on to what you bring in. From a psychological, like really wounded nervous system place, sometimes this is related to grief and unprocessed grief. Like if you've had a lot of grief in your childhood, or you've had the experience of having something you really wanted, and then the act of losing it, whether that was a pet, a toy, a parent, and so there's something that gets wired in here that things don't last, and the loss of them is too painful. So it's not worth having them. It's not worth holding on to them because they're going to be taken away anyways. And so you want to look for that. You want to look for any pattern in your past of grief, of feeling like whenever something good has come into my life, it broke or was ripped away from me, or it died, or it abandoned me in some ways. And then you start seeing these patterns in your business where whatever money comes in seems to just slip away like sand through your fingers, or clients come in and you'll get a bunch of new clients, but then a bunch of your old ones start to slip away. And so you never can get ahead. This particular wound can also show up if there's any sense of guilt, shame, heaviness around having a lot, having more than others, including having more than people in our family. I had a conversation with a friend of mine, and we were really doing some deep work around this pattern. And she essentially said to me, she's like, I don't think I can make more money than my husband and not throw my family in like this weird place of friction. She's like, we have like, even though I'm working, because I'm making less money, like he's still the leader of the home. I'm still taking care of a lot of the the stuff with the kids and with food and all of that. If things got flipped, I feel like that would throw our home into some kind of friction. That kind of fear, that kind of sense that having more is dangerous will create um, a block to our ability to receive and hold. Because it's not just about receiving a lot, it's about having something to show for it, right? So, and you see this, the example I gave in the receiving wound is also very, very alive here. Like, you bring in a bunch of money and then the furnace breaks. You bring in a bunch of money and your teenager crashes the car. You bring in a bunch of money and the dog eats the tennis ball and you end up with a $2,000 vet bill. Like, these are patterns of something in us that says, oh shit, I have all this extra. I need to find a way to get rid of it. So that is the have and hold wound. Now, the last wound I call the expansion block. Some people will call it the success wound, the fear of success. And this is something that shows up. It's related to money, but it's very alive in being seen, visibility. So this wound says essentially, it's not safe for me to be big. That which includes it's not safe for me to have a lot. Now, where this one goes to, there's always a kind of edge that being big, having a lot, makes us a target in some ways. I sometimes have heard this referred to the tall poppy syndrome, where it's always the tallest flowers that gets chopped down. So if people see me, if I'm this big, I'm going to automatically attract attention that I don't want, negative attention. So either people are going to want a piece of us, they're going to want us to share whatever's coming in, or they're going to be threatened by us, or they're going to be jealous of us and criticize and judge us or shame us, or they're going to expect things from us, or they're going to turn against us, or worse, they're going to abandon us. We're going to literally either have to leave them behind or they're going to leave us behind because it's too painful to be this big when they're still small. And so essentially, there's this sense that when we get successful, when we end up having more, when we get big, we will either be rejected, or we won't fit in anymore, or we won't belong. Which all three of those, when you think about us as a human being, all three of us go directly against our survival. And so something in the nervous system starts to say, don't get too big. Don't ask for too much. Don't hold on to too much. Don't dare to want more, because if you get big, something's bad's going to happen. And so that sense that being big, claiming our expansion, claiming our bigness, having more, is going to make us a target or an outcast in some way, is what starts to block our ability to receive. We don't want to make anybody else uncomfortable, and we also don't want to become a target of that. You see that a lot with, when I work with this with clients, there's a lot around visibility. There's also a lot around family. What if I made this much money? Is everyone in my family going to want me to help them out? If I make this much money, are people going to say, like, what the hell? Like, people are paying you this much to do what you do? Like, what? Just to do energy work? Just to do this? Like, there's a sense that if we dare to be big, people are going to start looking closer and they're going to start criticizing. So these are the four wounds, the four main wounds. And again, I'm inviting you to sense which one you have. All in all, most of us who are soulful entrepreneurs, transformational leaders, struggle to some degree or another with receiving wholeheartedly, without shame, without guilt, without fear. And most of us have a block in our nervous system that keeps us from really allowing things to be easy, allowing the flow in as much as we allow the flow out. And because we can't quite receive with ease, that leads to a sort of overwhelm and burnout that blocks even more our ability to create and grow and receive. So you see, receiving is all about relaxing. It's all about entering into a state of receptivity. It's all about actually interrupting that patterns of overwhelm, of doing, of pushing, and starting to lean back and come back into a place of allowance and welcoming. Receiving is not a doing or something that we make happen. It's actually something we get out of the way of. It's about a sort of trust that whatever we get will not come at a cost, will not come at a sacrifice, will not lead to being criticized, ostracized, judged, or rejected. That it is safe to have and to hold more of everything we bring in. Receiving is an unarmoring. I don't know if that's a word. It's the end of bracing. It's the end of resistance. It's actually receiving is the making space within ourselves for more. So when I talk about the expansion block that keeps us where staying small is staying safe, receiving is actually learning to be safe in our bigness, to be safe in our spaciousness, so that we're creating space for more to come in. We can't relax, we can't open, we can't get out of our own way and create space for more if we don't feel safe. So for me, rewiring our nervous system to feel really safe, being who we are and being here in this body, here on this planet, here in this day and age, however hard that is, here in our family of origin, like just finding and anchoring into safety in all these different areas is the primary foundational step to being able to actually receive and hold more, especially with ease and joy, and in a way that's going to feel deeply nourishing, not in a way that's going to feel like we have to give a lot for whatever we receive. This work that we do around receivership, around rewiring our nervous system for safety and for spaciousness, essentially, is something we obviously do for ourselves, but it's also something we do for the world, because the world needs safety right now more than ever. And the world needs us to be essentially able to keep giving, but we can't keep breathing out if we don't breathe in. One of the things, if you followed me at all, you've heard me talk about how nervous system kind of work in empathic resonance. Essentially, when your nervous system feels really safe, really rooted, really anchored and grounded and regulated and in a place of expansion and spaciousness, everyone around you starts to essentially be affected by that. And over time, starts to essentially match you, calibrate to your level of regulation, to your level of expansion. Your safety becomes their safety. Your presence, your way of being, becomes a healing balm in the world. You can literally start to transform and shift people and the world just by being who you are. So that's what we're doing this work. We're doing it for us, yes, because we want more and we don't want to have to work so damn hard for it. But we're also doing it because literally we start to impact the world just in our presence, just by being alive, just by doing what we're doing, just by walking into a grocery store. So when your nervous system doesn't feel safe with receiving, you're going to see ripples of that block everywhere in your reality. You're going to notice that you're attracting the wrong clients. Either they can't afford it, they're not committed, they don't show up for their sessions, they don't do the homework. Another way you're going to experience this is you're going to feel invisible, like the algorithm hates you. By the way, that's still to some degree a really alive one for me. There's still something in me around expansion and being seen. Thankfully, it hasn't affected my ability to bring in clients. So it's something I've released to some degree, but this is a really common one. Like when we have a receiving wound of some sort, a receiving block, we feel invisible. We feel like no one gets us, no one can see us. And so if that's happening, rather than doing more, like if you're seeing your engagement drop, rather than looking out there, what's wrong with your marketing, what's wrong, start to look in here. Start to look in your nervous system. Is there something in you that doesn't feel quite safe with being seen? Is there something in you that doesn't feel quite safe with being big and being seen in your bigness? When you have a receiving wound, you will find that your marketing just doesn't work the way you want it to work. Opportunities are not showing up, or when they show up, they fall through. The whole process of growing feels hard. It feels like hard work. You will also find that everyone around you is demanding more than feels fair to you. Like rather than receiving support, everyone is kind of like breaching your boundaries a little more. Everyone wants a piece of you, and they're essentially wanting you to give more than they're giving themselves or that they're paying for. So these are patterns. What you will notice that if it's taking a lot of energy, a lot of time to receive back, yes, there could be something strategic going on, and I always look at that with my clients as well, but there's usually something internal going on as well. Essentially, your lived experience, your outer experience, reflects whatever contraction are happening in your nervous system. That lived experience, that reality makes you feel, gives you a sense that what you're feeling or what you're experiencing is real, when it's actually simply a mirror of yourself. I'm going to share with you a very recent story. And I've shared this with a bunch of clients and with my own coach and such. But right around September, I was feeling really tired. I'd had family visiting for a couple months. And I was kind of seeing like, oh, the holidays are coming and I wanted more clients, but something in me also didn't want more clients. Like I felt like I didn't have the space for them. I felt like, oh, I always take a big break for Christmas. So like if I bring in a few more clients, it's going to throw off my Christmas vacation, or it's going to make my December really like intense. I don't want that. And so literally for all of September and a chunk of October, none of my marketing was working. And so I was aware that I didn't want clients, but I was also aware that a part of me wanted more clients. And so I was doing a lot of doing. And you can literally go check out my content in like August, September, early October, and you're going to notice that I was posting 3 times a day, trying a lot, trying. The sense of trying, the energy of trying is a clear indication that something in you is blocked. And then at some point, maybe mid-October, I was like, fuck this. If I'm not going to bring in any clients, I'm not going to kill myself either. It's fine. I'm making enough money. It's totally fine. Maybe I just coast for the rest of the year, and that can be fine. And I had an entire few days of really doing my own work, noticing all the places where bringing in more feels like it would come at a cost or a sacrifice, where bringing in more feels heavy, feels like hard work. And I shifted all of that within me. And I promise you, literally, I had 4 new clients in 4 days, book that initial intensive. And then I had a 5th one. And then out of these 4 or 5 people, I ended up bringing in 3 more clients. And it happened like a miracle, where I had been for literally 45 days pushing, 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 and nothing was working. I came home to me. I made it safe to be in my own body. I made it safe to be in my own business. I made it safe to be in my own life. I reopened so that I realized I actually have space. I have energy. I have what I need to serve more people. And the moment I was back into this place, things shifted like that. So sometimes doing more actually creates the opposite of what we want. It reinforces the block rather than doing the opposite. So our lived experience shows us our internal block. It doesn't show us the reality of what things are, because the moment you shift your internal landscape and you start to rewire and bring back into regulation and expansion all these wounds, all these knots within your nervous system, things starts to flow again. So when you start to shift that, and your wounds and blocks around receiving and holding more, and your capacity to have more are healed, they're reprogrammed, they're recalibrated to what you want. You've released a fear, you've released a shame, you've released a heaviness around having more. And you literally are back into a place of regulation, in place of openness, a place of expansion. Then growth happens all by itself. That clarity, that confidence, that flow happens by itself. Your message starts to resonate. People who couldn't see you suddenly start to see you. You become able to do and execute what you need to do with ease. You become visible. The marketing starts to work. You start to feel supported by life in a way that you weren't even a few days prior. All that second guessing, all that sabotaging, all of that resistance starts to release. So that's our big work. When our nervous system is calibrated and wired for more, wired and calibrated towards receiving, then we become able to operate, to give and receive from a place of deep safety, deep sense of satisfaction, rather than operating from fumes, operating from overwhelm, from scarcity, from fear. All right, so now let me give you a couple things you can start to do in your own, by yourself, in your own body, to start to recalibrate yourself for more. As I've mentioned, for me, the foundation, the first step is always safety. Feeling safe enough to be here fully, to be yourself fully as you are, and to start to take a lot more space. You want to notice where you're making yourself small, and you want to start to open. And I mean that literally and tangibly. Receiving is actually an allowing. It's not a doing. It's a receiving. It's an allowing. It's a welcoming. So it happens when we feel so safe in our own skin, so in trust with our own self and with life and with this moment, so filled and certain in our own unconditional worthiness and deservingness, that we're able to just relax. We're able to relax so much that everything opens within us. And we start to essentially have energetic and physical space to receive. I'm going to give you this metaphor with receiving. I think of this sometimes. This is actually one of the expansion hacks I have in my program. But like when you think of like angling your face up to the sun, like the rising sun, like maybe it's a cold early morning and it's kind of chilly and the sun's coming out and it's beautiful, and you just bring your face up and you like you feel the warmth of the sun, you feel the light behind your eyelids. There's an opening that happens when you're doing that. You're not trying to go grab the sun rays. You're not like grasping for it. You're not going towards it. You're leaning back and letting them come to you. It's an opening, it's a welcoming, it's a waiting and being available for the warmth. And it's a sort of trust. You have no doubt that if you lean back and you open yourself, the warmth of the sun will reach you. You trust that it's going to come to you, that it's going to feel good, that you don't have to work hard for it, that you don't have to do anything to get it, that you don't have to brace yourself against it. It's all about opening, and receiving is just like that. It's about becoming open, becoming receptive, and trusting that what you want is already on its way to you, that the good is already on its way to you, as long as you're out of the way and you're open, available to receive it. So this could even be a practice. Like, start to pay attention for all the ways that you're going towards something rather than leaning back and letting it come to you. You know, I'm thinking like even of like a scared animal. You don't like rush to a dog that's hiding in a corner somewhere. You sit, you lean back, and you just have your hand open and you let it come to you. And that's what makes it safe. It makes it safe for you, and it makes it safe for the dog to come to you. Every receiving is that way. It's got to feel safe for everything. It's got to feel safe for you. It's got to feel safe for money. It's got to feel safe for your client. That energy of leaning back and being welcoming is part of that safety. So the first step is always to claim and deeply access within yourself your right to exist, your right to be here, your right to feel safe and to take more space. So that's the homework I'm going to give you. And I'm going to show you a few ways you can do that to start to literally relax into expansion. So here are a few examples. Play around with taking more space on the couch or in the bed. Like, rather than being in a corner, claim some real space. Like, I'm thinking of my dogs. My dogs have absolutely no qualm taking as much space, spreading out as much as they want. A child has no qualm with taking as much space as they want on the couch or in the bed. If you're traveling, take more space on the bus or on the plane. You don't need to be like this. You can actually own the space around you. And I guarantee you, if you are like this, somebody else on the side of you will claim your space. So embody your own space and feel like you have a right to be here. You have a right to your whole space. This is something, I'm bringing this up as an example. Most of you don't know this because we're seeing each other through, Facebook and camera, but I'm very small. I'm literally 4'8", 80 pounds soaking wet. And I always have people around me in the plane that think that because I'm so small, they have a right to put a foot in front of me. They have a right to put their arm on my like armrest. It's almost like because I'm small, they have a right to my space. And I had to work on being like, no, I paid for this seat. I have a right to my armrest. I have a right to space in front of my seat. And you don't get to just claim it because you're bigger than me. I am big in a different way. And so that's our work, to be big in our life. Now, here's other ways you can start to claim more space and start to feel the sense of your right to exist and to be here exactly as you are. Take more space in conversations with friends, with your partners, like essentially being louder, being more opinionated, being prouder in your own opinions. Take more space in the shower, spread out, savor it. Like, taking more space is not just about physical space. It's about taking the time. It's about really savoring it. It's about not rushing. Take a bigger portion of food rather than making sure everybody else has what they need and you get the leftover. Maybe you serve yourself first and you make sure that you're meeting your own needs unapologetically. Essentially, learn to feel safe and comfortable having more, being more, welcoming more into your life, both in terms of quantity and in terms of quality, the experience of it, the savoring of it. Now, from more of a spiritual practice, you can pay attention in meditation or even in bed at night and start to become aware of any kind of chronic tension in your body, any place where you're bracing, where you're armored, where you're holding, where you're tight, and start to slowly send love and safety to this part of you that don't feel quite safe opening, relaxing, and just start to expand your body so that you can start to feel the flow of energy. You can't feel the flow of the current of money of clients if you can't feel your own flow of energy. And so energetically start to expand and spread and start to feel safe with not armoring, not bracing, opening, relaxing. I even have a simple practice where you could literally breathing in, saying yes, and breathing out, saying thank you. And just like releasing any resistance as you breathe out and welcoming, saying yes as you breathe in. So we're working with physical space. We're working with the space of our voice, being louder, asking for what we want, being opinionated. And we're working with energetic space, embodying all of your space, becoming energetically larger, fuller of yourself in all the best way possible. So these are some of the ways that you can start to work outside of doing my Wired for Wealth intensive, in which I actually teach you step by step my hatching process that brings you out of contraction and back into expansion and essentially makes it super safe for you to be you and for you to receive. If you want to know about that, then click the link in the description. But everything I just gave you is a way of starting to rewire and recalibrate yourself for more and start to feel safe with more. And not only safe, but deeply satisfied. All right, so that's what I have for you. Let me take a minute now to give you my last call to action. So if you want to find out more about shifting and anchoring yourself into this deep sense of safety, moving out of contraction, out of tightness, into a place of expansion, a place where you're able to receive and your identity and your business are being rewired for peaceful, consistent growth, for easeful receiving, for joyful wealth, then let's have a session together. And let me take you step by step through my process. I created my Wired for Wealth Intensive. It's 90 minutes, one-on-one with me. And for anyone who's new to me and hasn't had this intensive before, it's 55% off. So it's $149. During this intensive, we explore and figure out what are the unique nervous system wounds and blocks that are holding you back from being able to grow and receive at the level that you desire. And then I teach you my proprietary hatching process. Step by step, I show you how to bring your nervous system out of that place of contraction back into expansion so that you can use this in every single area of your life. Together, the aim is to start to unlock the power of your nervous system and your brain to bring about a whole new experience of creating, receiving, and having more in your life and in your business. And to do it in a way that truly nourishes and delights you. It's not just about like your bank account. Your bank account is part of it, but it's how to bring in money, how to bring in clients, how to bring in support in a way that's going to really honor all of you and feel deeply supportive to all of you. Because from my perspective, if you have huge success, but you hate your life, it's not success and it's not sustainable. And then at the end of this Wired for Wealth Intensive, if you want to do more work with me, then I'll give you a couple options. So this is not a sales call in any kind of way. It is an expansion experience. And you can experience the whole process at more than half off for $149 by clicking the link in the description. And then I'm going to leave you with this. I want you to remember that you are the most peaceful and powerful force in your life and in your business. Everything you need to succeed is in here already. The path to heal your past and to also unlock your potential and help you achieve the future you desire is literally held in your nervous system. And I would love to be your guide on that journey. All right, that's what I have for you. Have a wonderful rest of your week, and I will talk to you at some point. Oh, and by the way, there's only one left of these Wired for Wealth Intensive this year. So if you want that, now's the time.